everybody, Jason Sherman here. In today's episode of Zero to CEO, I have with me intellectual property and business attorney, founder and managing partner of EmergeCounsel, Stephen Weigler. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Probably the longest title I've ever said on this show, I think.
Well,
a lot of hats you wear. And today's episode, we're going to talk about how to protect and build value in a brand. This is such a great topic because of the fact the pandemic for 3 years launched so many new brands, and people really are new at it, right? They don't really know what to do with their brand or how to protect their brand. I recently had to get a trademark for my startup, and I had to try to secure the domain name. And, it's difficult when there's a lot of squatters out there. So before we get into all the different questions I have for you, how do you protect your brand if you chose something that is being squatted on by trolls and whatnot? People are just trying to make a buck off your name.
sure. Well, I think first you have to look at what is brand, because a lot of times people think that brand is just the name. Well, the name is the name. So when you say, what's the name of the company? And I say EmergeCounsel, which is the name of my company. That's just the name. The
Right.
brand is the entire customer experience. And so when we start working with clients, protecting brand it's what I do for a living, but the first thing to look at is, well, what's the essence of your company? What is the essence of what you're doing? And if you look at it that way, it becomes that much harder to really kind of knock off. So it's really important for the entrepreneur at a very early stage, if possible, to really set, at least dream, and figure out what's the essence of that company. Is it going to have a certain color scheme? Is it going to have a certain customer experience? And so, for example, we know if you go to McDonald's, now you might not think that's the world's best hamburger, but you know what the customer experience is with.
Right. You know what to expect. You know what to expect going into it. And that's kind of what you're saying in terms, I mean, if I think about like an e-commerce business, which there's probably 10 million of them online, you know what to expect going into that pretty much right off the bat, because you know you're going to be buying something on their site. That's what e-commerce is. So what kind of legal steps can a business take in that perspective? Because now, like, McDonald's has how many competitors? Burger King, Wendy's, a couple companies, but e-commerce has like a bazillion. So how do you protect your brand in that huge pile of e-commerce?
Sure. So you have to figure out what you're going to compete, how you're going to compete. So if you go to Amazon, there's some people, an Amazon brand, some people are competing on price. Amazon, if it's a popular item, Amazon's going to compete with you.
Yeah.
So they have the Amazon
Shady.
Basics, and we could have a whole nother discussion.
I know. I've heard
But
stories.
the point is you have to figure out what makes your sales proposition unique, and that's what we need to protect. And so a lot of times it's very difficult to roll out a young brand. And so you really want to have a name or something that people that would be called fanciful or unique, that people are going to remember. And maybe it's the colors, or maybe it's a product that really is in need, and you're a unique supplier of that product.
And let's
And
talk
by
about
talking to a brand attorney, and sometimes you need a brander. There's no doubt about that. I mean, but for any solopreneur or small company, it's really just sitting down with your team and figuring out what's the essence of that, and then talking to someone like me who can kind of pick out those protectable items. If you don't protect it,
and that's kind of what I want to talk about, because you
Sure.
said this 3 or 4 times during this last answer, and I
Mhm.
keep hearing it. So in terms of intellectual property, right? You make a name, a logo, color scheme, whatever. An image can be, like Puma is just the Puma. How do you protect your brand before you launch, or is it after you launch? I mean, I know a lot of, when you're on the uspto.gov site, they want to see the, that you showed it in public, right?
Yeah.
And so date of commerce, first use in commerce or whatever. So like, imagine I'm an entrepreneur who knows nothing about branding or trademarking or patenting or anything like that. And what would you say the top 3 things this entrepreneur should do with their brand, their name, their logo, their color scheme, any of the things that they're doing that is the essence of their business? What are the top three things they should do?
Sure. So the number one is what's called brand clearance. And so say I was gonna create a podcast that has the name of this podcast. I
Please don't do that.
exactly. But number one, and so you really have to do a deep search to figure out if there's someone using that particular name.
Mm-hmm.
And so that involves a lot more than going to the USPTO
Yes.
website. So it's always important at the very beginning when you're talking about brand clearance that you go to an attorney. We offer a free initial consult and we do free knockouts, which is
Cool.
kind of unusual in my field. But the software is really good. And we're able to tell pretty early on, is there going to be issues with trying to protect that brand?
Awesome.
And so you want to have a brand that's protectable. And again, that's why it's a lot of times important to have a unique name or a unique
right
identifier, what's called a source identifier.
It's not impossible, but it can be difficult. Now, what do you think about using a name that already exists, but for a completely different industry?
That can be okay. It's surprising, but so for example, we're using Zoom right now. If I use Zoom for a car,
yeah,
Zoom
you're
is
allowed
not
to.
going to be able, right? And it's entirely possible. So there's 45 different categories of goods and services that the trademark office looks at, and that's worldwide. And so if it's in a completely different category and the name is the same, we might be able to get that through.
Right, it's just a matter of being able to speak legal jargon to get through to the office at the USPTO, right? Basically,
it's very technical. Let's put it this way, Jason. I use a lot of the money that this firm makes is when people screw this all up and kind of do it all them.
They come to you after the fact.
Oh well, there's a how-to video. It's a very nuanced area because again, we started the conversation. Well, what is a brand? And a brand is a lot of different things.
Right.
And so it could be color scheme. It's when next time you walk into a Target or something, look at the customer experience of all the elements of that they're using to show that brand. It might be the Target, it might be the word Target, it might be some of the slogans they're using, which right now is like a lot about equity, social justice. All those things are their brand.
So you mentioned that you mentioned you're fixing a lot of people's issues, right? They're coming to you because they're probably getting office actions or they're probably getting rejected or whatever the problem is, or they just don't know how to fill out the forms because it is technical. I want to talk about that for a second. So when someone comes to you and they screwed it all up, what is like the top one or two mistakes that they made that people can now avoid by listening to you here?
Sure. So a lot of times, the biggest issue is that they're confusing with another mark. And so they don't see it. They don't think that it might not be a linear kind of like Zoom versus Zoom. It might be something.
Can you give an example? Anything
Zoom
at all?
versus Zone. So if I had a service that started with ZO and then ME Zone, that
Got it.
The office might consider that
similar.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of predictive algorithms that are in software that we use that can determine whether you have to get into the office examiner's head on that particular issue. The other thing is sometimes it makes it through the USPTO process. Like the examiner is just one person and they have thousands of marks to process. But then all of a sudden you get a cease and desist letter, or you get what's called a cancellation or a cancellation proceeding from a third party, and then it can even get escalated to federal court.
Wow.
Now, are they right? A lot of times it's nuanced. They have a lot of money.
They have lawyers, basically.
And so it's an exercise in how are we going to get you from point A, saving this brand, to point B, negotiating with them to have them back down. Is a complicated exercise. And so not only can it be litigious. Go ahead.
You mentioned using software and technology. I'm really interested in that because I'm a techie guy. I'm a techie, right?
Oh, it's so cool.
You're a sports guy. Shout out to the Denver Nuggets, right?
Yeah,
And
Nuggets.
and here I am, a techie, wanting to know how technology and software is helping you do better
Sure.
legal work. That sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, so I built this whole practice. I had a technology company before this.
Oh, cool.
And so it was education tech. We had predictive algorithms for school districts. So I came into this about 10 years ago, very tech oriented. And I noticed, and attorneys aren't.
Right. It's paperwork.
Yeah, it's just not, we were never trained in technology. I mean, they taught us how to use like Westlaw because it's lucrative for Westlaw, but it's a research service. Anyway, the point is I saw that there was a tremendous amount of room to use best in class technology, legal tech, and combine that with things that are never going to be like empathy, um, good
Do you
lawyering,
use AI at all?
advocacy. What?
Are you using AI at all? Artificial
Yes.
intelligence?
Uh-huh.
And how are you
That's a
using
lot of
that?
AI. Yeah. So especially in the trademark search. So we have a product called Total TM. I product tested, which is basically best in class technology combined with really specialized lawyering to get a trademark through at about at a relatively low price point, especially compared to what a competitor would charge. So it's
Right.
not as cheap as like LegalZoom, but it's not LegalZoom. It's
Right.
actual brand protection. So in that process, we send out to a service in Switzerland that slices and dices that mark in so many different ways
Hmm.
using AI.
To try
And
to really
so,
figure out if it's
yeah,
protectable. And you
yeah.
just
Well, not only is it protectable, is it going to infringe on someone else's
someone,
marks?
yeah, and you just mentioned how
Go
um
ahead.
so you were just mentioning how LegalZoom isn't really brand protection. Why is that? Why is that a myth or a misconception, or is it not?
Well, I mean, I'm not here to diss any.
No, I'm not either. I've used
What
Trademarkia before,
the
so
class is called legal filing services. And so, and I also do a lot of business law. Well, you get this, so you get a call. And I'm going to a different part of my practice right now, but you get a call like, we're fighting. The partners are fighting. All right, well, let's see the operating agreement if it's an LLC, or let's see the
right,
bylaws if it's a corporation.
corporation, yeah.
Yeah, and you get this, it's just template, boilerplate. And so if you're paying like $200 or something for them to prepare the forms, well, no one's ever put any human analysis in that. Or if they
Right,
have, it's they have a little time clock for whoever the attorney is, like spend no more than point two. Whereas like
right.
it's not brand protection. So we flat fee it. Our process is a little less than $1,000. But we flat fee it, and we include predictive algorithms, algorithmic searches. You can call me as many times as you want about anything. You're a client. I want to build a relationship with you.
That's cool.
Frankly, Jason, it's like our loss leader. Like I look at the
Yeah,
numbers.
I can imagine because I've been through so many startups in 20 years that I had to get lawyers for all sorts of different things, whether it was creating the bylaws and the cap table, because that stuff back in the day before software was pretty difficult, and making sure that we're protected. Then the trademarks and uh, provisional patents and God knows how many things I've gone through in my life, and I had to learn a lot of that because it was expensive and we were startups. So I guess what we can do here is you can tell people how you can help them and where they can find out how to book your service.
Sure. So everyone has a story and everyone has their own entrepreneurial journey. I've been through it myself. And so we offer what I wanted to do, and what we offer is we have free initial consults. And we also tend to be very project based. And project based means we kind of get our arms around what you need and create a flat fee project cost for that. And so if you want to, because I think people just hate calling and thinking that the
Yeah,
attorneys are,
$150 an hour or whatever it is,
yeah, and then it's, well, yeah, and then they get a bill. It's like, well, all I did was call, like,
and you're
so
charging
we
me two
don't, we
grand.
don't.
Yeah,
So this practice is framed around not doing that.
that's cool.
And so, but I have to get to know the client, and I have to get to know what their entrepreneurial journey is. So we offer consults, and all you have to do is email me at SWEIGLER at emergecounsel.com, or look at our website, which is www.emergeCounsel.com. And there's a place to schedule, and you're either going to schedule time with me or my colleague Marie. And we tend to be a very empathetic, human oriented shop, and there's no question too small, no question too big. Our clients are all over the world, and we've kind of combined really good technology and really good lawyering to make a really human experience. And our goal is to get our entrepreneurs from point A to point B.
I love that, Stephen. Check out emergecounsel.com. I'll put it in the show notes. Make sure you check it out if you need legal counsel. And again, Stephen, that was awesome. Appreciate it, and hope you guys all watch the next episode.